Good evening. This is Defacto Review, a weekly analysis of Mongolia's latest political, economic, and social issues by economist and columnist Mr. D.Jargalsaikhan, who is joining us remotely today. Good evening.
Good evening.
How's your new year?
Very well, thank you. How was it?
It was good, thank you. This week's topics are the governance and the relatives of those people that are governing, the restructuring of government-owned enterprises, and air pollution, which is a very big issue here in Mongolia. So there's an amendment to the public service law which prohibits relatives and spouses of people that are in office to be appointed to leadership positions in public service and to participate in loans that are facilitated by the government. So why did this amendment have to be instated in the first place?
Well, actually, it's very unusual law. Mm-hmm. Not every country has this kind of law for public service people. This law is one of the series of events or measures taken by this government of the Prime Minister to combat corruption very deep inside of the governance in the country. This law is a particular stipulates that relatives, brothers, sisters of spouses of politically influential people cannot have a high position or leadership position, as you said, in public administration. Mm. And they are prohibited from participating in the state tender and state-owned enterprises activities, procurements, very serious provisions. And that was prepared by the government, by the cabinet, and submitted now to the Great Hural, our parliament. Mm. But there is a big activities inside of the parliament, according to a source, that people really don't like the provisions. Why? Because there are so many relatives are working in state administration. One has a daughter, sister, whoever, and then through which there's some influence on their material wealth. This is no secret. There is a very deep rooted corruption in the country. So the people are so much against that. Who is the politically influential people? They are parliament members, cabinet members, vice ministers, and in the first draft there was the name of there was the position of president, but the final draft they submitted, the word president had disappeared. As Minister for Justice explained that, it goes without saying, because if the other parliament members and cabinet members follow, of course president will follow. And plus, president is regulated by a separate law on president of Mongolia. So whatever it is, president name is not there as a politically influenced person. Anyway, that particular provision will make substantial structure change in the cabinet maybe, and also in public service in the country. Now there will be dilemma, which is a less problem of between two. One, either that political influential person resign or his relatives would resign. So a very strange dilemma happening now, first time in the history of Mongolian governance. And it's also on the background of substantial fight against so-called coal theft happened in the country. And for the last 2 months, some 80 individuals of public administration being investigated under this so-called coal theft, meaning that there are millions of tons of coal had disappeared, and some of them had gone through the customs and border police to China as trucks went as empty registered, but actually it was not empty. So it shows really how deep is the corruption here and how big is the gray economy originated from this coal, in particular coal transport. Turned out they have been selling coal at the site of the mine and the transport 250 kilometers by trucks. And there is one place they pile all coal together, Tsaganhat, that's the name of the place. And from that Tsaganhat, very short few kilometers through the border of China, that is the most expensive, specially licensed trucks, licensed from China, I understand. And it was some 80 politically influential people are involved in this investigation for the last 2 months. Also very interesting news which shows how deep is the internal fight of the ruling party inside. The fact announced in the newspaper 2 days ago that lawmaker J. Munkbat, who was also a chief cabinet secretary some times ago, and Ulaanbaatar MP, and also Minister for Social Welfare. These two MPs related people are being investigated. They have made search in their houses, offices, except these two individuals who are protected by the law that you cannot investigate incumbent parliament members. That's strange law we have in Mongolia, and probably many people go there because this law provision to the governance in the country. The other thing, at the parliament session where Prime Minister had introduced that law, he also warned very, very serious, in serious way, the following individuals. Very interesting remark by the Prime Minister of Mongolia. He said, watch those public officers who has overconsumption, and cannot explain the source of their income. We will watch you, we will control you. That's what he said. And also he said that those who has also consumption with very high income, who cannot explain also the source of their wealth, will be checked. The third he had warned was railway managerial officials. He said, we will work with you. We will check with you. We will check you. He means that there are 2 large railway projects completed. In connection with that project, there are many corruption cases, according to the related offices' announcements, at least in the country. The fourth one was land speculators working in the Ministry of Environment. Watch, that's what he said. So it's a very much recognition by the Prime Minister of the country about the land speculation widely spread in this ministry, in particular, this one related to the licenses, related to Zaiseng and other Bogd Mount valleys. The final and finally, the word is coming from the Prime Minister is, he said, the department's heads of the Bank of Mongolia, who has non-bank financial institutions, we know all of you and we will announce your name. That's what he said. So along these 4 or 5 statements he made, just gives the people hope that this government is serious about fighting corruption against, including people who are in high-ranking positions in his own political party. The prime minister is the head of the political party, and the cabinet chief secretary, RESTRUCTURING, is still remaining as a secretary general. Instead, they have also, they recently, their party Congress, they elected just the secretary, 2 secretaries, not general secretaries. So all this, we hope to people that this cabinet is serious, and hopefully they will succeed.
Let's move on to our second topic for this week. Last week, the Mongolian Stock Exchange went public. So they went public as they offered their initial public offering to the public, and it was 34% of its total 120 billion shares to the public. So as a result, they raised 57.8 billion tugruks, and their initial target was 11.9 billion. So they were oversubscribed by 4.8 times, so almost 5 times their initial goal. The financial, and as a part of the new revival policy by the government has decided to make 26 state-owned businesses public this year in 2023. So why? What is the reasoning behind making all these government-owned companies public companies, like in the near future?
Well, in terms of Mongolian Stock Exchange, to be privatized 34% is much better than any other recent IPOs. Banks now go only for 5%. And Financial Regulatory Commission is still recognizing it as or giving permission as a public, initial public offering, which is not the case. 5% cannot make you public. So that's why people are raising a voice to whom this FRC is serving for. So what happens is only with few percent of shares being public cannot be controlled, monitored by the shareholders, minority shareholders, which is the base why Mongolian state-owned enterprise to be privatized through a IPO, just because we need furthermore control or monitoring of the true daily operations of the company, which is really outrageous, because we have now more and more state-owned enterprises every day, total now around 100, according to Mr. Tsingil, who is the head of the government agency for policy coordination on state property and regulations. Some 100 state-owned enterprises. They earned, for example, in 2021, total 10 trillion MNT earning, and the expenses was 9.1. And their total liabilities is 18 trillion MNT. So just what is trillion MNT? Mongolian total economy is 54 trillion MNT for 2023. And total budget expenses is around 20 trillion MNT, which is 38% of GDP. So in other words, it says Mongolian economy is so much state-controlled economy, 40%, plus the state-owned enterprises. And it needs now more monitoring to fight corruption inside of these state-owned enterprises, where the management executive officers are usually nominated from their own political parties, political nominee, which not necessarily means that it is merit-based, which is the base why the state-owned enterprises are working with loss. If the private company then it will be already bankrupt. So that's one of the reasons why many people go there. The other reason is on the board of the state-owned enterprises, there are 9 or so of them, and it is consisting of mid-level managers from ministries, That's one of the reasons why mid-level department head of the ministries like their job, because they can be on the board of several, some even up to 10 state-owned enterprise board, and of course receiving a way larger salary than average private company in the country. So we need more enterprises IPO, state-owned enterprise IPO. Good news is they have started, according to the Mr. Ulaanbaatar, the chief cabinet secretary, that they start now restructuring of the largest state-owned mining company, Erdenes, Mongolia, which has 30 largest, like one is silver company, one is copper company, 30 large state-owned mining companies, subsidiaries, and total 88 managerial positions are publicly announced for hiring. And the funny thing was, as soon as they have announced it for this 88 managerial positions, they got about 2,000 applicants. And that sorting out or selection of the applicants will be within this month, January till 28th. And after it will be only 88 will be selected. And they will have probably normal, decent salary, and they will not have any incentives to steal from the company. Anyway, we need to see that, and it's a good start to make a private IPO, at least 34% or 40%. Erdenes Town Tolga, which is now very much in the center of so-called coal theft, of 5 parliament members who are accused, they say wrongly, for stealing coal, they have proposed parliament resolution draft the other day in which they suggest Erdenes Town Tolga is to be given up to 40% free of charge to Mongolian citizens, like they did 12% of it in 2012. Now almost every citizen born by that time owns 12.5% of this Erdenes Town Tolga, and they are suggesting now another 28%, which makes 40%. Now, to be owned again to everybody, including the child who will be born by the day of distribution of the shares. So they suggest it should be given free of charge, and maybe it's a good idea not to sell. They should not have a right to sell. You know, we should remember our bitter lessons from early 90s when state-owned enterprises were privatized through vouchers, and in no time at all, within 2-3 years, all vouchers were in the hand of those who has cash that time, and today only few people owns the former state-owned enterprise of the socialist time. So a lot of things to learn and a lot of things to correct, but the most important direction is to make IPO of the state-owned enterprises.
So let's talk about these initial public offerings. So the 5 major IPOs that were released in the past year, namely the State Bank, Golland Bank, Monbeef Stanley, and lastly the Mongolian Stock Exchange, all of these IPOs were oversubscribed. Especially the Mongolian Stock Exchange was oversubscribed by 5%. So what exactly does it mean for an initial public offering to be oversubscribed, especially by that much?
Well, last year was a particular case of the Mongolian financial market, because somehow the central bank had decreased the policy rate to 5% or 6% at the beginning of the year. At the end, they have increased to 13 points. So it shows how much big fluctuation is happening on the money market in the country. And people were, because policy rate is low, the saving rate was unusually low for Mongolia, to weeks and nothing for US dollar. So people were looking for a way to spend in better way their savings. So many people have subscribed tons of whatever IPO was there. And that's why our subscription had happened. I don't know if this will happen now, because now the interest rate come back, maybe 11, 12, 13% of saving rate, which makes some 20% the loan rate, in the loan interest rate. So it's on one hand. On the other hand, people in general looking for better place to invest. And there is no other things in Mongolia. Real estate, they buy it, but no, real estate, they cannot sell much anyway. So they cannot store all money in the real estate. Those who can already did. And now they're looking for more shares of any almost IPO, and hoping that this IPO will bring more success to them. However, the investors and people not paying attention that as we have talked, very small percent of the shares are sold publicly, which gives very small space for independent directors to come to the board. And in particular, like, for example, in order to protect minor shareholder in Singapore, for example, major transactions of the company are only made by the consent of more than 50% of the independent directors vote. So it's so important now in Mongolia to have this kind of peculiarities in order to have better control of your money.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to our final topic for this week, which is a very big issue that we have here in Mongolia, which is air pollution. So it doesn't have to take a scientist to tell that air pollution is a problem here in Mongolia. You can just walk out in the mornings, or go outside of Ulaanbaatar for like 20 kilometers, and you can see the smog that is hovering above the city. So in terms of PM 2.5 concentration, which is how they measure air pollution, Mongolia is consistently very high in terms of air pollution within the months of December, January, and February. Always usually like 10 times higher than the threshold that the World Health Organization has held. So the city has spent a lot of money trying to fight this problem. Between 2008 and 2016, 550 billion turugs were spent trying to fight air pollution. And between 2017 and 2020, 456 billion MNT was used to fight air pollution, but it somehow seems worse than before. So this problem hasn't been solved yet. So over 1 trillion turugs between these this amount of time has been spent trying to fight this problem. So what did they spend this money on?
That's a good question. We don't see the proper report on all this money, because there were 2-3 governments changed since that time. But whatever they spend for the money, unless they address the core issues, the problem will not be solved. For example, the population is growing all the time mechanically by the people coming from countryside to Ulaanbaatar city, and plus also for example, the amount of car for 2021 have increased 8.5% in Ulaanbaatar city. Now we have around 300,000 plus households in Ger district using heating stoves, and which is according to the scientists, 80% of the air pollutions, and 10% is from the cars. We have over almost twice more cars than the households in Ulaanbaatar city. And many of them 80% of them are so-called car called Priuses from Japan, which is coming, very interestingly, without any exhaust pipe filter. Turned out that filter has particular rare earth elements that Japanese are taking. before they sailed to Mongolia, according to an official recently. So what's going on? In Ulaanbaatar city, we have so many cars, either cars without that filter, which is directly polluting the air of Ulaanbaatar city. And we are staying in a traffic jam for 3 hours a day. So altogether makes our life even worse. And as you said, on January 1 and January 1st and 3rd of January, it was particular cold weather, according to the weather officials, that inverse, so-called on the air, that 2 or 3 times thicker, or it was more darker, more heavier, because the cold weather, they were not flowing throughly or freely to the atmosphere. So that's the situation. And how can we solve the issues? Where are the core issues to address? It's a housing problem of Ulaanbaatar city with normal sanitation. These districts have not normal infrastructure. They heat themselves. So we need more centrally heating system. Second, we need better conditions for people to live in countryside, not to come Ulaanbaatar city for jobs, fortunes. For example, agriculture, the meat industry. If it is becoming more profitable, then why people should stay in Ulaanbaatar city? So how to develop the countryside of Mongolia, regions of Mongolia, how to get them connected with the border, related border with China and Russia, and for free trade. And that's why the government now recently is creating the Ministry of Ports. And as of yesterday, a couple of days ago, a new lady minister, Volontoya, who speaks Chinese, Japanese, English, Russian, becomes that minister, and hopefully the conditions for regional business will be a bit better. The fourth issue is, as I said, to make a better coal briquette. You know, since 2019, May 1st, in Ulaanbaatar city, it is prohibited to burn raw coal. Instead, they have produced briquette and sold at 75% discount price to every household. And there is some debate about the composition of this briquette, whether it is producing more harm or less harm, in which form, which elements. So we must see very much independent third-party review on the quality of these briquettes, because people saying that it was our smoke was black color before, now it's a more gray color. So this kind of things we need to solve as Ulaanbaatar citizens, along with, of course, monitoring better the money we spend, trillions of MNT spent already.
This has been it for this week's Defacto Review. Thank you for joining us for this week's, the 3 most important topics for this week.
Hopefully it gave you some information, knowledge about fighting corruption in the country. In Mongolia, Mongolians and Mongolian governments look like very serious combating the most largest hindrance to make progress in this country. Thank you very much for spending your time with us.